In today's episode, we have Dr. Thomas Dünser. He is the head of the Office of Financial Market Innovation and Digitalization here in Liechtenstein. He also was the head of the work group of the Liechtenstein government drafting the Liechtenstein Blockchain Act, also known as TVTG, this unique legislation we have here in Liechtenstein. We'll talk about the vision of the Liechtenstein government with the token economy, but we will also talk about lessons learned and what's next. Because Liechtenstein is a member of the European Economic Area, and therefore what is happening in Europe is very crucial for us here in Liechtenstein because we are a part of the European Economic Area. So we'll talk about the market in crypto assets regulation and the DLT-MTF pilot regime. There's no better person to talk about the future of regulation in the blockchain space here in Liechtenstein than Thomas Dünser, and I'm really excited to have him here. Let's start. Welcome to Coffee from the Block from the House of Blockchain in Liechtenstein. My today's guest is Dr. Thomas Dünser. He is the director of the Office for Financial Market Innovation and Digitalization here in Liechtenstein. He was also leading the work group for the Liechtenstein Blockchain Act, also known as the TVTG. Thomas, it's a big pleasure to finally have you here.
Thank you, Thomas, for the invitation.
Thank you very much. No, seriously. I mean, we started in 2016 the journey together, and it was a trip, right? Started in 2016. Now we're in 2022, end of the year. So much things had happened, and I wanted to invite you to discuss about what you were able to manage here in Liechtenstein, what you were helping the country, and how instrumental you were for the blockchain ecosystem here. So it's a big pleasure to have you here, and I think the audience wants to learn a little bit more about not only the director and the head of the work group, but also about Thomas Dünser, the private individual. You have a PhD. But it's not in law, it's in
engineering.
Yeah,
that's true.
at the university in Zurich. But what is your background then? Where did you come from?
Yeah, that's a funny story. So I'm originally a mechanical engineer, so I have learned how to design planes and machines,
And your PhD was about an elevator steering module or something like that.
Yeah, I made an industry project with a PhD. So it was together with the elevator company Schindler. Yeah. And it was about designing a completely new technology for elevators for skyscraper. So the intention was to save space for elevators used in the skyscrapers. But the topic of my PhD was about decision making using simulation models in innovation processes. That was the topic of my PhD. Okay. So it was a bit of a mixture of both.
Yeah. And then you were at the financial intermediary here in Liechtenstein, ETH VP Bank, right?
Yes, it was also kind of a funny story. So when I started at the ETH in Zurich, the banks always were asking for engineers to come to work for the bank. But I always said, okay, if you have studied such interesting things like mechanical engineering, who does want to work for a bank? Because it's so boring. And then I had a job offer by the VP Bank in Liechtenstein. And so my future boss at that time said, okay, explain to me how interesting it is to work in a bank so he was about to set up the risk management department in VP Bank, and we were a team of 3. And he explained to me how I could use the tools I have designed in my PhD for risk management purposes and so on. And so I decided to switch to banking, and it was one of the most interesting times of my life. So it was just 1 year before the financial crisis of 2007, 8, 9, 10, and so on. And so we just set up our risk management system, and
then it was battle tested.
Then it was battle tested, but it was successful. So
it was successful. Okay, so it was a good model then, obviously. Okay, and then you switched to the government. You were directly at the Prime Minister's office.
Yes, so the Prime Minister was looking for somebody to implement the financial center strategy of 2013. And so, it just came into his team, basically, and to just to manage the way Liechtenstein's financial center wants to go in the future. It was a challenging time at that point of time because the financial crisis and many changes in the political system. And then after 1 year, I focused on innovation. So the question how we can foster prosperity of the financial center in the future, seeing the developments coming from technology at that point of time. No, not blockchain primarily, but more fintech in general. Crowdfunding was the buzzword at that point of time, but also some of the first fintech applications. So we designed this innovation framework and laid basically the fundament for the development of blockchain in Liechtenstein at that point of time.
Yeah, and before that, I mean, Liechtenstein was doing well. I mean, the financial center was doing well. There was no immediate need for a change of strategy. I mean, yes, we went through the financial crisis, and yes, there were some changes in strategy, but in the end, the financial center was doing well. Given that good situation, still the idea was to think about innovation and to where this could lead. And before that strategy, we had actually no fintechs at all. Yeah. If you looked at the time, and there are numbers published by our Financial Market Authority, the regulator, that there were no fintechs before that.
Yeah, exactly. So it was not necessary to change something directly, but it was. We have seen the dynamic that came from technology. So the first fintech, I think, in the world were at the end of the 90s of the last century. So, and we have seen that the power of this the new technology just drives the development of the future applications in the financial center. And just it was a decision we have seen at the point of time that it's relevant for the future, or it can be strongly relevant. And we just want to be part of this development, that it can happen in Liechtenstein and not so that's in 10 years, 20 years, the prosperity is not there. So it's a long-term strategy. And it's true at that point of time when we started, we had almost no fintech. At least no company said it was a fintech, maybe one company. And yeah, coming from our measures, I think within 3 years it was about 200 companies that were approaching the government or the FMA coming from fintech.
And most of them were blockchain-related companies. If they had this pie chart and they published these numbers. And then in 2016, I met you for the first time consciously. We were at an event in the SAL in Schaan, and we just had a chat, and then I shared that I was working on my PhD about blockchain, and you said, interesting, and I said, yeah, Thomas, so if you work for the government, please tell me when there's something around the corner, because I don't want to have my PhD due, right? And then you invited me to join the work group of the Liechtenstein government. That's all public information, meanwhile. It's back then it was behind closed doors, so nobody knew about it. And the Prime Minister first talked in March 2018 about that Liechtenstein is working on a specific blockchain regulation. That was huge back then, and it was interesting to see that there was this political will of the Liechtenstein government, and especially the Prime Minister, to support that innovation back then in a time where this was not widely accepted, right? And then actually you actually worked on that law, and you were also approached by the European Commission, or at least there were a lot of exchanges or thoughts about regulation. I remember for the first time in 2018 where we were in Brussels together at an event, CEPS. How was that, like being Liechtenstein not very famous for exporting laws? Now even the European Commission is approaching Liechtenstein, or at least asking or exchanging thoughts about that. That's kind of interesting, right?
Yes, it's not often the case in history of Liechtenstein. I mean, it was a special step to be an early regulator in that sphere. So it was not it was I would say it was a brave decision also by the government to do that step. Because usually we just take over laws from other jurisdictions. So we often take over laws from Europe, also historically from Switzerland or from Austria. But that we create own laws. Some laws in Liechtenstein are made in Liechtenstein, like our company's law, and now the TVTG, the Blockchain Act, and this think tank, the CEPS, was organizing this event about the Liechtenstein Blockchain Act in 2018. You were there as a participant, and also representatives from the Commission were there. And it was kind of the first step that Brussels learned about our regulation. And it was after that we had a very fruitful discussion about our Blockchain Act, our experiences. And so what we see now with MiCAR, some of our concepts and thoughts are just represented also in MiCAR regulation. So like
market and crypto asset regulation from the European Union. So,
I mean, this is maybe one way that is consciously also considered by the Commission to have small countries or pioneers that explore the new possibilities and to learn from them, and later on to find the best way how to regulate a new development. And this has been done in this market and in crypto assets regulation.
Let's go back a little bit in time because it was also a risk, because you said that in 2016 and 17 we had projects here in Liechtenstein, like a lot of fintechs. It was also a risk that with regulation these players would leave the jurisdiction and say, why would I go to Liechtenstein and getting regulated when I can be in any other country or almost any other country where there is no regulation? Is it fair to say that these, or what is your point on that? Because I was told a lot of times if that was a good or a bad thing to have regulation. But what is your take on that? Did the companies tell you, no, don't regulate anything, we don't want to have regulation here? Or what was the strategy behind that to regulate in an area where no regulation was in most countries available?
That was indeed a big discussion, also in our working group, as you remember. I mean, the feedback from the companies that came to us was that it was a lack of legal clarity. Is it allowed to legally to make an ICO, for example, or what is Bitcoin? How it is treated legally? And there are a lot of, and we realized that there are a lot of very fundamental questions not answered in our legal system that came from this blockchain development. And of course, a company or a project could do an ICO everywhere in the world, maybe, or without regulation it was possible. But of course, there was also some kind of risk with that. And what we decided to do at that point of time, there are projects that want to do innovation without asking the state and without thinking about compliance. And others wanted to be compliant with the regulation. And we wanted to be a place for those projects that want to be compliant with the rules, that want to be part of a legal system and confident that what they are doing, driving the innovation further, this is compliant with the legal system. And so it was, to my opinion, and also the experience of the last years was that, of course, it was a risk to regulate, because regulation is always challenging, it costs money, it takes more time. But the clarification we made with our blockchain law was very important to allow this development in the last years, just to say that every token is a financial instrument was a very important step. So that this what we later call the token container model. That's if you tokenize the security, it's the security laws are applicable. If you tokenize something else, it's not the other laws are applicable. So this was very, very important for the development of the space. Of course, the level of regulation is always a question. So we defined a certain level of regulation. It could have been lower or higher. There have been reasons for both levels, and some projects did not come to Liechtenstein because the level of regulation was too burdensome for them. Others came to Liechtenstein because exactly they wanted to invest this and to say they are regulated in a good manner.
And I mean, back then there was no other very comprehensive example of regulation, so it was tough to find a balanced approach, as you said. And Liechtenstein, now we have our Blockchain Act in force since 1st of January 2020. And now we have this market in crypto assets regulation from the European Commission. But not only that, also the digital finance package. Alongside that, we had the DLT-MTF pilot regime, DORA. So it's a full package, this digital finance package, which is coming to the European Union and European Economic Area states. First of all, what is Liechtenstein is a member of the EEA. What does that mean for Liechtenstein, for the Liechtenstein companies? And what is the strategy of Liechtenstein regarding MiCAR? Do we wait and see, or what's our strategy there?
So basically, this development is a very important step for European Union, also for the European Economic Area, where Liechtenstein is a member of. So it is. I mean, what we have seen in the development of the last years is that when we started to talk about regulation and about our Blockchain Act, we were the first movers to make, or one of the first movers to make clarifications. And without other countries, it was a national regulation, but it was clear that it was possible to make it here and to access all markets in Europe without a specific regulation or attitude. But with the time, every country had a specific attitude on blockchain. So it became more complicated to have cross-border business. And now with this digital finance package, we now will have a harmonized market in Europe, which is very, very important for the development of this sector. So I very much appreciate this step and welcome this step.
So it's the first time ever where you have a big market, a 400 million plus market, where you have one license in one member state, and you are regulated by one national competent authority. In essence, that there are several levels of supervisory, but in essence, you can get your license, for example, in Liechtenstein with the Financial Market Authority, and then you can use that license and actively market your products and services through all of Europe and the European Economic Area framework based on this harmonized law. And I think that is huge, because that is what we don't see globally, right? You don't have a big market accessible via one license yet. So I think that is, I totally agree, that is one of the big steps which we will get with this market in crypto assets regulation. But is Liechtenstein ready? I mean, we have our own Liechtenstein laws. We heard that, yes, and I heard that from a lot of people already, that they were highly influenced by the Liechtenstein law and the Liechtenstein approach. But if you do the gap analysis, our regulation and our registrations for the service providers are different. There are some where we have a registration requirement where there is no equivalent in MiCAR, and the other way around. So can you share already a little bit, like where it's going to be, like, or what is the strategy and the journey Liechtenstein is actually going for?
Maybe I must start a bit further. So the concept of the TVTG was not a financial market regulations. We did not want to regulate crypto exchanges as such. So one specific business model we have seen at the time, not regulation of only ICOs. It was basically a regulation of the token economy and kind of a catch-all regulation, that everything that it was not covered by the existing financial market regulation is covered by the TVTG. So for that reason, we regulated the rules and not business models. So if you do an activity which carries some risks or is important for the regulator, you have to follow some rules and to register it. With MiCAR, we now have a regulation of specific service providers, as it is in financial market So, the trading facility or some just very specific roles that are related with investment in crypto assets. And so this regulation is much more specific than we could do in a general token economy regulation. So what happens now is that every business model that is now regulated under MiCAR can be exempted from the TVTG, from the supervision of service providers. So that's all financial markets aspects are now covered with MiCAR, and everything else is then covered still under TVTG, which is very clear not financial market regulation. So the level can be lowered by that. What is important to see that the civil law fundament of the TVTG, which is, to my opinion, still one of the most important elements of the TVTG, must be applicable to all kinds of tokens we use or crypto assets we use in every field of activity. So even for the security token markets or trading facilities, it is necessary to have a proper civil law fundament, which we have with a token model, token container model, and also the regulation of digital shares and digital bonds. This is important for them. Second, but also for crypto assets, it's a very, very good fundament. So every country needs to have a fundament for crypto assets in a civil law term too.
But so they only have to have homework. I mean, you said that Liechtenstein. That's people sometimes forget about that. Let's just focus on that for a second. So Liechtenstein not only have the supervisory model already in force with this TVTG or Blockchain Act, which is then actually going to be overruled by the Market in Crypto Assets regulation from Europe, the MiCAR. But on top of that, Liechtenstein created that vision of what do we have to do to make that token economy, the vision of the token economy happening here in Liechtenstein. And yes, one part was to regulate intermediaries, to regulate these roles on the one hand, but on the other hand, we have the civil law framework, which allows you for tokenization of assets. And people sometimes forget about that. If you have now this broad definition of crypto assets in Europe, you have to have a way how to, or what could potentially happen is that you have a lot of assets which at the moment, they are not tradable, they're not transferable, they're not directly accessible in a digital way. And tokenization of assets is basically that you make something which is not easily transferable, which is not directly digitally approachable or accessible or transferable, completely digital and digitally transferable and clever, like it's smart. You can use a smart contract and define the rules, what should happen if you transfer, for example, a tokenized asset. And this is the framework and the base of that you will have these intermediaries which are going to be regulated in MiCAR. They have just way more legal certainty when it comes to the underlying assets and the universe of liquid assets they could actually provide services for. And that is the homework for a lot of other countries to think about a similar or to think about their frameworks, how they address these issues. And I think that is one of the big things which will last here in Liechtenstein, for sure, the civil law part. And it's hard to overestimate the importance of this civil law framework in this big picture of the token economy.
Exactly. So what we have tried to define in our token act or civil law fundament is that not only security tokens or crypto assets like the native tokens or virtual assets are covered, but every asset in the real world can be tokenized, and also every right in the real world. And this is still the fundament.
Ownership, for example, to physical property,
ownership to paintings, IP rights. Every right we can imagine in our legal system can be tokenized with our token law and the civil law fundament. And this is so. If you look further, maybe in 5 years, 10 years, this can be used for tokenization for containers or supply chains and so on. This is the model that allows the usage of blockchain for almost every aspect in our economy. And this is
fair to say that it's one of the key technologies to digitize our world. You're also the Office for Digitalization.
Exactly.
So it's one of the key pillars to digitize our economy, is it?
If you look at a metaverse, or if you look at Web3, the fundament for those visions is blockchain. So you need a tokenization of assets and money to cope with that.
And digital identities, which can also be
exactly.
So
that was the vision we created in our working group, and that was, I think, this is a step to go that this vision can be implemented throughout the world, and I'm very, very happy that many countries have seen the work we have done in Liechtenstein and are appreciating the token container model and the civil law fundamentals, and are thinking about how to implement a similar concept in their legal framework. But of course it takes time, because every legal framework is a bit different. So has a different tradition, but it also needs a political will to do it like this. So you have this vision of a government to say, okay, we want to push this digitalization of our economy by creating legal certainty using token. This has to be the fundament, and then you can create the rest.
And this is not over because we have a new government now in place, because the old Prime Minister, which was actually very instrumental for the Blockchain Act, or the TVTG, now we have a new Prime Minister, Dr. Daniel Riesch, which was also at our event at the Token Summit, giving the speech in the morning. But I had a very good discussions with him, and he's very, very supportive as well. So he shares this strategy, and actually makes this strategy now his strategy with digitalization of our economy. Or do I get something wrong here? I think that is exactly what he is working for, and he has a background in digitalization.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is I'm very, very happy that he's supporting this development too, as much as his the predecessor has done. But it is also embedded in a strategy. So what we did, our role to support innovation in the financial center is also defined in the financial center strategy from the government. So that's digitalization and financial markets are pushed and supported, so that we create a good environment that this development can happen in Liechtenstein. And also we have a digital agenda where this is this strategy was set, and it is still in the implementation of that. So and this is important that the government has defined in 2013 until 16, 17 several pillars of the development of in the future years that are supporting this attitude to blockchain. And but it also always needs a personal support of the ministers, of the members of the government. And I'm very, very happy that this is there, and we can continue in this journey.
Yeah. And actually the Blockchain Act was adopted unanimously, like there was no counter vote. So that's we had a strong support in our parliament with the adoption of this TVTG. And you said it's more than just like one person or one group of people supporting that. You need a strategy. You need the government supporting it. You need the regulator, which is happy to get educated to get into these technologies and into these topics. And I am really happy that our Financial Market Authority has a lot of knowledgeable people. And yes, for sure, not every answer as a market participant or as market participants when we support them, not every answer is the answer the market participants expect, for sure, but at least you get an answer. And I think it was a very interesting journey so far. And this dialogue, which Liechtenstein authorities offer, that you can, if you want to, a market participant can have a meeting with you and your office and your employees. They can have a meeting with the Financial Market Authority. So it's possible to discuss businesses or use cases before you implement them. You said some companies, they don't want to discuss their business models, but I think Liechtenstein is the right jurisdiction when I mean, if something is very clear, and we did that a lot of times already, you don't have to have an in-depth discussion with everybody. But I think that is one of the USPs of Liechtenstein, that if something is new, we don't have a lot of experience with it, we can sit together at a table and discuss these things. I think that is one of the big USPs of Liechtenstein, besides being a member of the European Economic Area.
That is true. I mean, this innovation framework we have created, and this consists of the Office for Financial Market Innovation and Digitalization, and also the regulatory lab within the FMA, is based on the idea that innovation can only happen based on a dialogue, an open dialogue, and a constructive dialogue with companies. This was also the reason why we came in contact with blockchain in a very early step in this development, or rather early step, I would say, because we just talk to 100, 200 companies every year, and to learn from the pioneers what happens next, because if you talk with an open mind with pioneers, you understand if there is a true development or just a hype or a buzzword happen. So this was the reason why we were able to start a working group in 2016 about the topic of blockchain. And also the FMA has installed the so-called regulatory lab, which consists of knowledgeable people that understand technology and are in depth knowledgeable about all kinds of digital technologies. Because without this counterpart from an office or an authority, it's not possible to talk about the problems you have as a company.
Because you have to start to provide the framework that you are able to have an in-depth discussion. Yeah. So you spend more time in educating your peer than thinking about solutions for the challenges you have.
Exactly. And so the regulatory lab was installed in, I think it was 2015, 16? 15, I would say. Yeah. I don't remember. I lost the feeling of time. So, but for a very long time, and so they have a very good knowledge about all kinds of technologies. And this is a very important part of the benefits of Liechtenstein. That you can do that and discuss with educated people about the topics.
There was a discussion where one member of the Financial Market Authority said at a public event that the Financial Market Authority is at the moment working on a gap analysis of the market and crypto assets regulation and the TVTG, because what the FMA wants to do is they want to make use of this Article 123 in the MiCAR regulation, where service providers which are already registered based on the local regulation can have an eased process to switch to a MiCAR, market and crypto assets regulation. So he shared that publicly, that they are already working on that, and they want to support this easy process for local registered companies here in Liechtenstein. And because you said it's an ongoing journey, it's not that we did something once, the TVTG, and we stopped there. No, you said already that yes, it's going to be the civil law part will be still a very instrumental part for dissuasion of the token economy, and this will still exist after MiCAR, or when MiCAR is in force here in Liechtenstein. But the Financial Market Authority is working on this process to make it easy for local companies to register then this MiCAR license, where then they get access to the European Union framework, which is also very interesting. There are some concepts about regulating DAOs, so decentralized autonomous organizations. I think Liechtenstein, it's fair to say, is not like resting and saying that we were the starting point. No, it's still trying to be the pioneer and taking on this pioneer role. At least that is my experience, my impression, that we did not stop. It's not we are done with that blockchain stuff.
No, not at all. It was also the attitude of the government that this is the beginning. I mean, the step or the speed of innovation is so fast that it's not possible to say we create a law, then it's done. So we need to learn all the time what happens next, and to find out what can be done an adjustment. So we also plan to adjust the TVTG and also the civil law part with the experience we had in the last 2-3 years, so that we'll just continue learning about the applications and the questions that arise from practice. So and MiCAR and also the digital finance package is very, very important that we have a clear strategy. That's the transition from TVTG to MiCAR is very as convenient as possible. So MiCAR allows kind of a what we call a grandfathering clause. So if you are registered in a member country according to supervised by an FMA, you can profit from a grandfathering clause. So of course you have to change your business model that you reach the requirements of MiCAR, but you have a certain time to do that, and after that you can access the European markets. You don't have to stop your business and apply for a new license, and this is a very, very important step also for our business or the companies that are here or plan to be active in Europe. So that's it's possible to use the TVTG as a fundament for entering this MiCAR environment. Also, the DLT pilot regime is an important pillar. So that's we're planning to.
For those who don't know what the DLT-MTF pilot regime is.
Sorry.
No. It's just because a lot of people forget about that. It's not that the Commission just issued the draft of MiCAR in September 2020. It was this digital finance package, as you said, and this pilot regime is actually, MiCAR is covering crypto assets, so the non-financial instruments, and then the European Commission also analyzed what should be changed in the existing framework when it comes to tokenized securities. And basically it's a pilot regime and an exemption of the CSDR, the Central Security Depository regulation. There's one very challenging part because there's a limitation of the issuance volume of 500 million. But besides that, I think it's extremely forward-thinking of the European Commission and the European Union that this pilot regime was actually announced and now enforced next year, that we can learn how we can reorganize our capital markets in Europe with the use of these technologies. And with this exemption of the CSDR, make these transactions more efficient. Liechtenstein, and I just wanted to give a little bit of a perspective how important that is and why Liechtenstein is prioritizing that as well.
I mean, it's very important to emphasize that. So it's the first time that we can use blockchain for security tokens and financial instruments to create a trading environment using blockchain technology and the benefits of blockchain technology. So it is a very, very important step, and the Commission has chosen to make a two-step approach in this pilot regime to learn about what happens, and then to decide if this is opened up for more than only limited sector. So in the first step, it will be limited to 6 billion trading, or at least the value of listed companies or listed securities must be under 6 billion. So it's limited to a certain extent, but the limits were set up from the first draft of this pilot regime to the version now. It is set up so it creates a room where an interesting business is possible, and opens up the room for the full development of using blockchain for financial instrument tokens. So this is a very important step, and we try to. So it will be enforced in Europe in March next year. In Liechtenstein, the process of taking over this law in the EEA takes a bit longer. So, but it will be there as soon as possible. So if somebody is interested to learn about that, I can keep up the information, or can write me an email. But
we can just drop your address from the Office of Financial Market Innovation in the comments. Yeah. And
we will provide this information. And so this, but it's necessary to have a license as a securities firm for providing a trading facility or to be a regulated exchange.
So it's substance over form. It always was. If something is a security, it still stays a security, it's whether or not you tokenize it. Yeah. And so financial market laws are applicable.
Exactly, and it's not an easy license. Yeah. So if you want to use this regulation, it needs money, know-how, and organization. But it can be a very interesting step for all kinds.
You brought 2 books you wrote. The first is Legalize Blockchain, which has a subtitle, How States Should Deal with Today's Most Promising Technology to Foster Prosperity. You already talked about that. It's a very easy to understand book, actually, and maybe you describe it yourself. What was the goal of this book? And we will share the link where you can buy this book. But that was the first book you published about blockchain or DLT, in essence. And then your second book is Stable Money. And the subtitle is What We Can Learn from Bitcoin, Libra, and Co. So what are these 2 books all about? In a nutshell, why should we read these?
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's a bit a special situation that if you have a full-time job, it's possible to write a book in your free time. But it was, for me, was necessary to put down some messages that are not part of this discussion I have seen going on. So the first book, the Legalized Blockchain book, is about, basically it's about a strategy we have defined in Liechtenstein to cope with blockchain. And to say, okay, blockchain is not only about investment in Bitcoin or in ICOs, it's much more. And we have to consider the much more so that it can be used in token economy, because this is the much more important part for the prosperity of a nation. And so the risk is, if we only focus on financial market aspects of blockchain, we can lose the ability to use blockchain for the rest of the token economy. And this would be very, very bad for the development of an economy, because the token economies, metaverse and Web3 and how it's called, is very important that it's possible in a jurisdiction that you can use this technology for that.
Sooner or later, another jurisdiction will make use of this potential if we don't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty obvious. And the second one? The
second one is about the discussion about CBDCs and digital currencies. And it's about a very broad discussion about the stability of our financial system. We have 2 parts. On one hand, we know that it's necessary to have a digital money or a digital currency for the token economy, because a lot of innovative steps in the token economy or digital economy are not possible without tokenized money. On the other hand, we have some fears that introducing a stable money can put the banking sector or the financial system at risk. And with my book, I want to make clear that it's a decision how to design a digital currency so that the banking system can be developed further and to be stable, because the current status of the financial system, to my opinion, as a former risk manager, is not at its best. So it's and with blockchain, it's possible to create a stable and safe financial sector by also creating a digital tokenized money that can be used for the token economy. But it has to be done consciously, and otherwise we will face some risks. Some risks that I described in my book are visible today, unfortunately. So the challenges of steering an economy also by central banks, I have covered also in, and yeah, it was a contribution, or it's still a contribution to understand what is the relevance of blockchain technology also in the financial system.
And these 2 examples here we can give away, I heard.
Yeah, so I would say so. The first want that explain in the comments to this blog why they should receive these books, can have a copy of this book. So.
Okay, so we will give these to for free for the first, no, not for the first ones, but for the two with the best reasons why they want to get it. Thomas, thank you very much for joining. We could talk for another 3 hours, I think, but I already invite you again. I think if we have more to talk about where the TVTG amendments are going, or if you can share more about the MiCAR development or the DLT-MTF pilot regime, I would love to invite you again to sit here and discuss that. My final question to every of my guests is, what is their favorite coffee? I know that you have an amazing coffee machine at home as well, a very Italian one, and you like coffee, but what is your most favorite coffee?
Yeah, we have the same passion. That's
obviously, so we share not only the name, some passions.
So for everybody outside of Liechtenstein, not every Liechtenstein man is called Thomas and loves Italian coffee. But I personally love very much the very Italian coffee, so the Arabica and
the dark blends,
the
like
dark
this.
blends.
Okay,
yeah.
nice. So. And the traditional, okay, and espresso, or is it Americano or cappuccino?
Always espresso.
Always espresso. Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure to talk to you, and it was really nice that you shared all of these insights and the story and the development of blockchain here in Liechtenstein, and the relationship and why Liechtenstein is embracing that so much. And I learned and I was again supported with my personal impression that it's not over, it's the starting point. And thank you for all of your work you are doing as a director of this Office for Financial Market Innovation and Digitalization, and also thanks to your team. Now you have a team working for you, and it's really good to see that this is now institutionalized, so to say, this Office for Financial Market Innovation and Digitalization. Thank you very much again, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure.